Tonight, Donald Trump again the target of what appears to be an assassination attempt at his golf club in Florida. Good evening, I'm Kyle Dowling. This is ABC News, Northern Territory. Also tonight, the federal government clashes with the Greens and the opposition over its Help to Buy housing scheme. Oscar Piastri wins an epic Azerbaijan Grand Prix, logging the second win of his Formula One career. And Timmy, the therapy turtle, doing his best to help Territory kids get through their medical challenges. Donald Trump has survived another apparent assassination attempt. This time, the Republican nominee for president was on his golf course in Florida when a Secret Service agent opened fire at a man believed to be holding an assault rifle. The suspect has been arrested and identified as authorities investigate what motivated the would-be assassin just 7 weeks out from Election Day. North America correspondent Barbara Miller is in West Palm Beach, Florida.
I think one has like a rifle pointed to the car or something.
The moment when another apparent assassination attempt on the former president ends in an arrest.
They got 30 vehicles blocking the highway.
The suspect is taken into custody after seemingly trying to flee. Authorities allege the man was hiding in bushes near Donald Trump's golf course in West Palm Beach, Florida, when a Secret Service agent noticed the barrel of a gun sticking out.
We are not sure right now if the individual was able to take a shot at our agents.
Donald Trump was a short distance behind the agent who opened fire.
They have an agent that jumps one hole ahead of time to where the president was at. And he was able to spot this rifle barrel sticking out of the fence and immediately engage that individual.
Had he not been seen, he could have had a clear shot.
Between 300 and 500 yards, but with a rifle and a scope like that, that's not a long distance.
Police say the suspect ditched his weapons, an AK-47, a GoPro camera, scope and 2 backpacks as he fled the scene. US media have identified the suspect as 58-year-old Ryan Wesley Routh, a man with strong views on world politics. He had apparently travelled to Ukraine after the Russian invasion and was turned down when he tried to sign up to fight.
I have no military experience, so they're like, you're not an ideal candidate.
But he seemingly ran this website encouraging Westerners to fight for Ukraine, and another advocating for an international legion for Taiwan.
Thank you.
This comes only 2 months after Donald Trump narrowly escaped death when a gunman opened fire at a rally in Pennsylvania. The head of the Secret Service resigned after it, admitting it was the agency's worst failure in decades. There will now be more questions about how someone could have been close enough to threaten the former president's life again.
He's not the sitting president. If he was, we would have had this entire golf course around it. But because he's not, the security is limited to the areas that the Secret Service deems possible.
President Joe Biden issued a statement saying he had directed his team to ensure the former president's continued safety. Vice President Kamala Harris, the Democratic presidential nominee, echoed those sentiments, writing, "Violence has no place in America." The Republicans' running mate, J.D. Vance, says he spoke to Mr. Trump before the news was public and that Mr. Trump was amazingly in good spirits. In a post on social media, the Republican leader thanked people for their concern and well wishes and reiterated that he was safe, praising law enforcement for its response. Donald Trump has events scheduled this week, including a town hall in Michigan in a couple of days' time. And pushing ahead would fit with the fighting stance his supporters have come to expect from him. But it's hard to see how events here would not have some impact on campaigning over the next 50 days until the election. As for the polls, well, they've shown very little movement through a previous assassination attempt, a change of candidate, and 2 noteworthy debates. All the signs are that despite its remarkable twists and turns, 2024 remains a very close race. Barbara Miller, ABC News, West Palm Beach, Florida.
NT Police say it was extremely lucky no one was injured in yesterday's collision between a cattle truck and the Ghan tourist train near Alice Springs. The incident has led to calls for a safety review of all regional railway crossings, with the NT Road Transport Association saying some crossings have suffered years of neglect.
Calls for upgrades to the Altunga crossing north of Alice Springs after a crash yesterday highlighted safety risks, including that a hillcrest and shrubs near the crossing hinder visibility.
You don't see the train, and then you look to the south and look back, or just out the corner of your eye, you see the train coming, and it gives you a bit of a fright.
Mr Hayes' cattle was on board the truck, which police say collided with the Ghan's second locomotive at 10 o'clock yesterday morning. Authorities say it's lucky neither the cattle nor the 220 passengers on board the train were injured. The truck driver was treated for shock and taken to hospital.
The scene of the crash has been cleaned up, but local truckers still have concerns about the safety of the crossing.
If there's things that need to be done to make those crossings safer, then we'll certainly assist with any assessment and pass that information on to the relevant authorities who are responsible for those corridors.
The NT's Transport Union is calling for rail operators to review all regional crossings.
Some of these level crossings have had no boom gates or no light since it was constructed 20 years ago now, and we need to use every technological solution we can find to ensure that level crossings are safe across the territory.
While an investigation into the crash continues, a spokesperson for the Ghan's operating company Journey Beyond said rail freight operator Pacific National had cleared the train to continue to Adelaide. Anisha Pilarasetti, ABC News, Alice Springs.
Police say there's a specific person they want to speak to following an alleged hit and run in Katherine over the weekend. They say a driver deliberately drove at a 31-year-old man along an intersection of Giles Street and the Stewart Highway in Katherine, hitting him before fleeing the scene. The 31-year-old man remains in a serious but stable condition. Assistant Commissioner Travis Wurst says it's being treated as domestic violence because they believe the suspected driver and the male pedestrian knew each other.
Anyone else that was in that vicinity of the Stewart Highway and near Giles Street intersection at about that time, any footage you may have from a dash cam or any other information you have, we'd ask you come forward to the Northern Territory Police.
A 62-year-old man has been charged with supplying drugs in Darwin in an alleged plot to import methamphetamine from Thailand. Officers intercepted this package from Thailand in Darwin last week and noticed the same sender had shipped similar packages to the same address. Police swapped out the contents of the package, replacing the drug before sending it on to its destination. They then executed a search warrant at the man's home. He'll face Darwin local court tomorrow, charged with supplying 389 grams of methamphetamine. The federal opposition and the Greens are set to block one of the government's housing packages in the Senate, arguing it will do little to help affordability across the country. But the Prime Minister believes it's just political posturing, describing the Senate as obstructing his government's agenda. From Canberra, political reporter Matthew Doran.
Australia's suburbs are growing.
These beautiful homes where we've got lots of new families moving in.
But not fast enough. The government insists it's drawn up the plans to help.
Something that should frankly have sailed through the Parliament before now.
The Prime Minister pressuring the Senate to back his Help to Buy legislation, which would allow the government to take a share of up to 40% of a house for 40,000 low-income households.
This is a scheme where the government comes in as the bank of mum and dad.
These two bills that are before the Senate today aren't going to make a whit of difference to the number of people that own their own home.
The government insisting the Greens in the Senate are the impediment to progress.
Can they get anything done this week?
The Greens in turn accusing Anthony Albanese of taking inspiration from an unlikely source.
Our previous Prime Minister was a bulldozer. Let's not forget, that didn't end so well.
I mean, give us all a break, really.
The fiery debate spilling over in the chamber.
The government is pulling a political stunt.
Labor labelling the Greens' ongoing opposition to the proposal as evidence they're in cahoots with the opposition leader, Peter Dutton.
And you empower him You empower him.
Now, this is such good policy. It was part of the Greens election platform in 2022.
Our position that we took to the election was very different. It was a much bigger government-backed and government-owned scheme.
Two Albanese government housing policies hang in the balance, and there is little doubt the government would like to see both through Parliament. But if the current impasse continues, the shape of an argument which will rage through an election campaign can be made out. Labor portraying the Greens as grandstanding obstructionists, while the Greens claim the government is too timid. On current indications, it could take voters to break the deadlock. Matthew Doran, ABC News, Canberra.
Indigenous elder Brian Gray was stolen as a child and forced to live at a Rockhampton orphanage for more than a decade. His account of humiliating punishments and lies about his identity will be one of many told at Queensland's Truth Inquiry, which started in Brisbane today. Here's National Indigenous correspondent Carly Williams, and a warning, some details in this story may be distressing.
Remember, protect yourself at all times.
Uncle Brian learned early to fight for himself.
Ever since I left the orphanage at the age of 15, I think, my life just went downward spiral, you know, because I didn't have any family or anything.
Stolen at age 4, Uncle Brian spent more than a decade at St George's Home, a central Queensland orphanage run by the Anglican Church, now closed.
Shameful punishments where, you know, like talking in the bedrooms at night, you'd be all lined up and marched one by one down to the toilet and get your head flushed in there. It's quite traumatising, actually.
The Anglican Diocese of Rockhampton told the ABC the actions are unacceptable, no matter the time.
It's this truth Uncle Brian plans to share with Queensland's Truth and Healing Inquiry, starting today here in Brisbane.
The hearings are part of the Queensland Government's Path to Treaty Act.
A focus on reconciliation and a focus on healing. And those are really strong foundations which the inquiry will continue to achieve over the next 3 years.
But there are fears if the LNP win next month's state election, it may not make it that far.
So you still intend to repeal treaty laws?
Yes. Uncle Brian Gray says yanking the inquiry would be a kick in the guts.
Unless you've got a safe environment and a platform to speak and have a voice, you know, how can you be healed?
There's a Bible phrase, the truth will set you free. But Uncle Brian says it'll disturb you first.
I'm starting to win a few rounds, you know what I mean? And make peace with myself.
Witness statements to the inquiry will begin on Wednesday. Carly Williams, ABC News.
As part of our series on education, we're going to take a closer look at Year 9. It's been described as the lost year where learning and engagement can take a dive. The educational gap between advantaged and disadvantaged students widens by more than 5 years in Year 9. Schools across the country have adopted a specialised program for Year 9 students in a bid to keep them on track.
At St Patrick's High School in Tasmania's north, the Year 9 students dance to a different beat. There's less time in traditional classrooms and more time for things like aquaculture, housing and design, and cooking.
This semester we're actually making cheese. I got to do photography for the first time.
The specialised Year 9 program also includes rites of passage, involving reflection and outdoor challenges.
It acknowledges that 14 and 15-year-olds do take risks. They want to be challenged. It builds resilience.
When students hit Year 9, many are dealing with changes to their bodies, brains, and experiencing social pressure.
Schools have found Year 9 to be a bit of a tricky year. Some teachers have even gone so far as describing Year 9 to me as a bit of a lost year.
The data shows a downward slide in results from primary school to Year 9. The gap between advantaged and disadvantaged students becomes wider.
That gap between students in the more advantaged families is about 2 years ahead of students from more disadvantaged families in Year 3. By the time students reach Year 9, that gap more than doubles. In reading, it's over 5 years.
A number of government and non-government schools across the country have specialised Year 9 programs to keep students engaged. As these Year 9s head back to the classroom for their final years of school, they'll be armed with new skills and plenty of memories.
I'm almost ready to take that big leap.
They're preparing us well, so I think we'll be okay.
Fiona Blackwood, ABC News.
Coming up on 7:30 with Laura Tingle, the builders going bust, leaving Australians without a home.
My gut was telling me that the big red flags were obviously popping up.
Insolvencies in the construction sector are at historic highs.
It's pretty disappointing to see the building the way it is at the moment.
All our materials have just skyrocketed.
And I'll speak to the Federal Housing Minister, Claire O'Neill.
On this day, 49 years ago, the Australian flag was lowered in Papua New Guinea's capital to mark the end of 70 years of colonial rule. To mark the young nation's Independence Day, tens of thousands have turned out across the country as PNG celebrates progress and the challenges ahead. ABC correspondent Marion Farr reports from Port Moresby.
The celebrations started early with fireworks over the capital. And as dawn broke this morning, whistles and cheers greeted the raising of PNG's flag on Independence Hill. A country of hundreds of tribes united.
It was not too long ago when our fathers and mothers decided to forge the most diverse nation on the face of planet Earth into one unity.
On this day in 1975, the Australian flag was lowered for the final time. It marked the end of almost a century of colonial rule under Germany, Britain and then Australia.
Gough Whitlam said it was his proudest achievement in office to have birthed Papua New Guinean independence, and I think that's a wonderful legacy.
People here couldn't agree more.
Today we are celebrating independence today. We're so very happy here and so excited here.
I feel proud of my country, Papua New Guinea, because that's the time where people come together, celebrate in culture.
What you're seeing here is just a taste of what's to come, with Papua New Guinea already gearing up for its 50th anniversary of independence next year. It'll be a time to reflect on how far the country has come and the ongoing challenges it faces, such as unemployment, poverty and women's rights.
This generation, under my words, pledge that we will not let the dream go to waste, but we will do our absolute best to ensure we pass on a better PNG to our children.
Determination and hope for a young nation looking towards the future. Marion Farr, ABC News, Port Moresby.
It was a night where a sweeping subtitled Japanese epic smashed records. Shogun dominated this year's Emmy Awards in Los Angeles and became the first non-English language series to win Best Drama. Actress Elizabeth Debicki was the only Australian winner, picking up a gong for her portrayal of Princess Diana.
Capturing the essence of the People's Princess won Elizabeth Debicki the crown for Best Supporting Actress.
Playing this part based on this unparalleled, incredible human being has been my great privilege. It has been a gift.
But the night belonged to Shogun. The historic Japanese epic took home a record haul of 18 awards, including Best Drama.
You guys greenlit a very expensive, subtitled Japanese period piece whose central climax revolves around a poetry competition. I have no idea why you did that.
While its two leads became the first Japanese actors to win Emmys. The dark drama Baby Reindeer turned its creators' disturbing life experiences into TV gold.
Take risks, push boundaries, explore the uncomfortable, dare to fail in order to achieve.
Hacks was a surprise winner for Best Comedy, with an acting gong for its lead.
The amazing Jean Smart.
I appreciate this because I just don't get enough attention.
And there was another standing ovation as movie star Jodie Foster won her first Emmy for True Detective.
Well, this is an incredibly emotional moment.
And chaotic kitchen series The Bear served up 11 awards.
To all the Latinas who are looking at me, keep believing and vote. Vote for your rights.
In an Emmy field that was more diverse than ever. Sarah Geraghty, ABC News.
Turning to finance now, Australian shares are approaching the most expensive ever, ahead of a widely expected interest rate cut in the world's biggest economy. Here's David Chow.
Well, the share market was just a whisker away from hitting a new record, with the All Ords up by 0.2%. But I'm sure we all remember what happened a month and a half ago when we last reached those levels of exuberance. Now, this Thursday's US interest rate decision appears to be behind today's relative optimism. There's no question there'll be a rate reduction, but here, size matters. The odds of a big 50 basis point rate cut have jumped to 57%, which will likely lead to Donald Trump feeling very annoyed, as rate cuts usually benefit the party that's currently in power, even though they're not responsible for it. Staying overseas, Wall Street and Britain were relatively upbeat, while markets in Japan and China were closed for public holidays. And back home, Alcoa jumped nearly 6% after announcing plans to sell its 25% stake in a Saudi aluminium operation for $1.6 billion. And at $143, Commonwealth Bank is close to hitting a new record. Now, that bank's an interesting one. When you compare CBA's share price with analyst estimates of how much it's expected to earn over the next year, it looks a bit overvalued, especially compared to the All Ords, BHP, JP Morgan, which is America's biggest bank, by the way, and even tech giants like Google, which have a lot more growth potential, especially in the world of AI. Now, in commodities, the price of gold hit a fresh record high, while oil and iron ore fell, and the Aussie dollar is buying 67.2 US cents. And that's finance.
Australian Oscar Piastri has claimed a Formula One win for just the second time in his career, taking out the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. The McLaren driver triumphed after an epic duel with Ferrari's Charles Leclerc.
The Aussie flag flying high. Oscar Piastri, the toast of the Formula One world. The 23-year-old Victorian took the checkered flag for just the second time in his burgeoning career.
It's the Aussie on top in Baku.
To move up to fourth on the drivers' standings and elevate McLaren to the top of the team's championship.
Yeah, I think considering where we started when I joined the team last year, we were literally last, and now we are leading the World Championships.
The Aussie started from second on the grid.
And foot to the floor as we go racing in Baku.
And on lap 20, he made his move.
Piastri down the inside, late on the brakes, makes the move stick. Piastri takes the lead of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix.
Went for a pretty big lunge, but managed to pull it up and then hung on for dear life for the next 35 laps.
Ferrari's Charles Leclerc tried valiantly to wrestle the lead back. Piastri would persevere. When Sergio Perez and Carlos Sainz had a horror crash late, the Aussie would cruise to victory under a safety flag.
Results like this definitely weren't possible 12 months ago for myself, so it's a massive team effort, and yeah, excited to see what the future holds.
For a youngster in just his second Formula One season, that is certainly an exciting proposition. Next up for Piastri, the Singapore Grand Prix next week. Daniel Garb, ABC News.
A near full-strength Geelong is facing a selection dilemma ahead of Saturday night's preliminary final against Brisbane. Star player Tom Stewart is likely to return, but it's far less clear whether the Cats will pick veterans Cam Guthrie and Tom Hawkins.
Chris Scott will be doing a lot of walking and talking this week. The Cats coach has tough decisions to make. At the top of the list, a retiring champion pushing for one last hurrah.
It's so touch and go with, the timing of how his foot is healing.
A sore foot has sidelined Tom Hawkins since late June. The 35-year-old recently returned via the VFL and is pressing his case for a senior return against the Lions.
I'm lucky I don't have to sit in the committee and make the big decisions, but he's given himself every chance, and that's all you can ask for from a great teammate.
Cam Guthrie is another veteran pushing for selection. Young, tall Sam de Koning could be recalled, while important midfielder Tom Stewart appears fit and will almost certainly return.
It's great to have a full team at this time of year, but it's a challenging time as well.
Sydney is facing its own selection dilemma as it prepares for Port Adelaide. The Swans must replace captain Callum Mills, who injured his hamstring in a training mishap.
It was disappointing. It was, he's, as we know, a very important player for us. We can't replace his leadership ability. He's very good in that space, but we've got some options there.
John Longmire says coaching is a tough job after Ken Hinkley was fined $20,000 for instigating a verbal altercation with Hawthorn players on Friday night.
Coach is at the front and centre of a lot of things. Kenny's done a fantastic job with that football team.
The Power are doing their best to move on.
It happened, it got dealt with, and now we're done with it.
Tom Maddox, ABC News.
You've probably heard of the widespread benefits of therapy dogs or even cats or horses, but in a groundbreaking approach to mental health care, another unique form of therapy is making waves.
This northern long-necked turtle may not look that comforting or cuddly, but at a Darwin Children's Clinic, Timmy has taken on the role of therapy turtle, and he's helping hundreds of young people.
Hey Jazz, would you like to see Timmy today? Okay.
Jasmine is living with rheumatoid arthritis.
We've been coming here for, about 3 years with her very complex medical condition that she has. Timmy's great because he's an alternative sort of therapy animal, I guess.
His unusually calming presence makes clinic visits a much less stressful affair.
Then they don't know what's going on, and they don't necessarily understand what, mum and dad or their carers and the doctors are talking about, or what's going on with their body. So, does make it a much nicer experience.
They're no longer focusing on their pain, they're no longer focusing on why they're at the doctor, and really makes such a massive difference.
Timmy was abandoned by a local law firm years ago.
When he first arrived, I noticed that he was always at the tank wanting to interact with the kids. And so I started taking him out and taking him outside for walks.
He's been helping children like Jasmine ever since.
Older adults often have rheumatoid arthritis, but when you have it as a child, it's often much more severe. So Jasmine, battles with pain every day, and being able to hold Timmy and cuddle Timmy, as you saw, it can be really helpful for her pain and certainly for her anxiety.
A therapy turtle helping young people feel comfortable in their shells. Roxanne Fitzgerald, ABC News.
Looking at the weather now, and tonight's weather pick of a sunrise at Nightcliff Jetty has been sent in by Caroline Brooksby. Cloudy and showers in the south and centre of the NT today, some scattered showers across the top end. 35 in Darwin today, 36 for Berry Springs. Zooming out, 35 for Katherine, 38 in Jabiru and Borroloola, 36. On top of 22 in Alice Springs, Yalara 23 and Tennant Creek 27. On the satellite, cloud over much of the territory, a patchy cloud band in the north of the country, which is generating showers and thunderstorms. There's gusty easterly winds across the southern and central areas of the territory due to a large high near the Bight, extending a ridge across the country. Interstate tomorrow, cloudy for Hobart, Melbourne 17 and partly cloudy. Morning frost and sunny for Canberra, a sunny 22 for Sydney, mostly sunny for Brisbane, sunny in Adelaide, and Perth sunny and 27 tomorrow. Returning to the NT, mostly sunny and 25 for Alice Springs, Papunya 26 and mostly sunny, showers easing for Tennant Creek 21. Looking north, Katherine 27 with showers easing, showers and 31 for Borroloola, on top of 31 in Nhulunbuy with a shower or two. As the west, showers easing in Bachelor and showers easing with a top of 31 in Darwin tomorrow. There's a low tide tomorrow at 12 in the afternoon, and there's a strong wind warning tomorrow for the Beagle Bonaparte coast and Go Peninsula coast. The sun will rise tomorrow at 6:39 and set at 6:43. Ahead in Darwin, a very high chance of showers tomorrow. The showers could be sticking around later in the week. And mostly sunny and warm in Alice Springs, possible shower or two next week. Stay with us now. Laura Tingle is up next with 7:30. Good night.